debating the issue of boycotting countries who refuse to comply with UN resolutions, and Israel happens to not comply with over 100 UN resolutions. And I managed to get a Conservative, a Liberal Democrat, and a Labour councillor to sign so we had cross-party unity on the issue that we should not be dealing with countries like Israel. And it actually got agreed. And that's historic. It's a first in Europe. And if Birmingham, the second city in England, can do that, in fact, since we did that, other cities have now followed. We are breaking through those taboos, those things that were set up saying you can't talk about it. Because that was the first thing I was told. You can't debate this here. I said, we are going to. When we had that protest I mentioned, that which had over 6,500 people, the council didn't even give permission. It's unheard of that you can't have a protest in Birmingham. It said, we had loads of protests over loads of issues. But when it came to Palestine, whoa, we can't upset certain people, we can't do it. And I was told I would have to take personal responsibility. If a single thing happened in city centre, I would be liable. I took that on. I was told if there's any damage, any clean-up, I was presented with a £2,000 cleaning bill. Again, never heard of when it comes to protesting, but we went ahead and it was totally peaceful. It was absolutely fantastic. Huge numbers turned up, and even the police turned around and said, if the council aren't giving permission, we are going to open the roads up for you. That's a first in the city and for the cause of the Palestinian people. And when I got those emails back that evening from people watching on the internet, because yes, the Palestinians are very educated, very alive, very with it, and they were saying how happy they were to see that they were being remembered. Just being remembered is part of being human, isn't it? There's a physical hurt that people go through, but the emotional and mental trauma is another thing altogether. And just us connecting with them and being with them and acknowledging what they are going through, I feel is something where we can be of some help. It's still modest by comparison to what a lot of other people are doing, but never, never, never underestimate it. Sometimes we think if we can't do the huge, big things, you'll hear, there's no point in going to a demonstration, there's no point in writing that letter to your MP. Nothing is going to change. It's not true. It makes it. I'll give you a tiny example. My mind, it's almost grotesque to use it as an example because it's so petty in comparison to what we've been talking about. But after 9/11, when I was spat on, because people assume that I must be a terrorist just because I happen to wear a headscarf and all the rest of those kinds of assumptions, what upset me wasn't the fact this one-off random person, had these assumptions and did this pretty nasty thing. It was the way everybody else just walked by. And what would have made a difference to me was if even one person said, "Are you all right?" It was that dehumanising, the fact that I knew people had seen it but chose to walk on. That hurt me more than the actual physical act. And actually one of the greatest things I've experienced, because yes, I'm a psychotherapist, I deal with depression, but I felt a bit of a depression when I was watching telly and feeling powerless. But when we were out in the streets in the anti-war movement, people from all walks of life, pensioners, students, black, white, Asian, Muslim, Jew, Christian, atheists, side by side, in the name of humanity, I felt uplifted. Never mind the hope we were giving the people that we were marching for. So don't underestimate the importance of coming together like this, to discuss what is happening, simply to speak the truth. We don't need to exaggerate. We don't need to hype. We don't need to over-dramatise, because the realities are there and they're horrific enough. But what we do need to do is to break through those lies, those myths which have so paralysed people. I think it's interesting that at this time the biggest grossing film is Avatar. I don't know, if you haven't watched it, go and watch it, because it's a really interesting depiction. They've got the Na'vi people, and they're portrayed, as in the film, they're considered backward by this colonising force. They've gone to this planet, they're going to colonise it, there's resources there, lots of parallels with the war on terror. But it's interesting that a lot of Palestinian protesters are now covering themselves in this blue because they see the parallel with how they overcame that oppression. Because they were arrogant. They had the military might in the film when you go and watch it. And it was like, there's no way they're going to beat these people, but their spirit and their dignity and the sophistication of the humanity and the morals was far greater than the colonisers who may have had the mechanics, but they'd lost their own humanity. And so I think the fact that that has resonated somewhere, because obviously it's the storyline as well as the great technical wizardry of the film, there's something in that which people are relating to. And in the world that we have now, whether it's about the environment, whether it's about the huge debts that a few elite section has made the majority suffer for, whether indeed it's these imperialist conquests and the arrogance of colonisers, ordinary people resist it. Ordinary people don't like it. Ordinary people relate with those people who suffer with that. I think as long as we hold on to our humanity here, then there is always hope. Now lastly, and on one thing on the convoy, coming back to the magnificent convoy, I'll be honest with you, when George Galloway said, we're going to go and break the siege, we're going to go to Gaza, I thought, you can't do that. It's only us. It's got the whole, they've locked it down, and what are we going to do with that? And they said, right, let's get the trucks ready. We've got some old ambulances and trucks from Birmingham, London, Bradford, Middlesbrough, all over. Suddenly started momentum. My brother said, I'll go. Two of our respect counsellors, they were going and collecting medicines from pharmacies and, the NHS, we've got an ambulance, all sorts of things. Suddenly this drive and people were fundraising and getting clothes and food and equipment. And it happened. And there was uncertainty. There was no guarantee you'd get past the English Channel, never mind get across, the Africa and into Gaza. And it was absolutely amazing. And yes, there was hardship. There was hardship involved. This footage, you'll see the Egyptian police, because we have the stooge governments right there. The first recipient, when it comes to American aid, is Israel. The second largest recipient is Egypt. But it's got an important role, hasn't it? Supporting Israel. And it was the Egyptian police who physically attacked our convoy. And even then, they didn't turn back. They said to George Galloway, we'll let you in, just won't let them in. And he said, no, we are not moving unless every single one of us goes in. And that's exactly what happened. And it was absolutely amazing. You watch on the YouTube those scenes. And it was the largest convoy since the Second World War. That's how historic. You're not going to see it on the BBC. You're not going to go on about it. It doesn't matter, because it happened. And the importance of physically going, physically bearing witness, that's what this has been about. The fact that Fiona went, she's not Muslim, she's not Palestinian, she's not Arab, but that's in her heart now. And her words are far more powerful than mine, because she's been there. I still haven't. I hope I will, and in fact, my intention, what I was going to end on is, whilst Egypt may have now said, we are not going to allow any more convoys, because it was a successful one from America. America, where it's even more difficult to talk about Palestine, but they had an amazing convoy sent from there. But Egypt may have said no, but guess what? Turkey is saying yes, and we are going to take another convoy under the banner of Turkey with a whole fleet of ships. And my last urge to you is, hopefully I'll see every single person here join me on that next trip to the convoy to Gaza. Thank you very much.